welcome to the family, son.
Hello and welcome back to the channel. After making my most recent video about the Alan Wake DLC and seeing the trailers and gameplay coming out of Gamescom, I found myself firmly into Alan Wake hype mode, so I thought now would be a good time to make a predictions and theories video for the second game. Let's start with what we actually know. The last time we saw Alan, he was trapped in the Dark Place. He'd regained his rational mind and started writing the manuscript Return, but that was over a decade ago. Alan's been trapped in the Dark Place for 13 years now. How come Return didn't work? And the easy answer to that is that he didn't stick to traditional narrative structure laid out in the hero's journey. In The Hero's Journey, which was a study of narratives by Joseph Campbell, the protagonist must go through 17 steps known as monomyths, which in turn form into 3 acts known as Departure, Initiation, and Return. So we know that Alan has tried to skip to the end by going straight to Return without writing Initiation, which is now his task for the second game. And just a quick random fact, which may be coincidence, but I personally don't think it is, because knowing what Remedy and Sam Lake are like with their meta-narratives, it would make sense. Joseph Campbell borrowed the name Monomyth from James Joyce's work Finnegan's Wake, and I find it way too coincidental for the main character to have the surname Wake and that be part of a title of a book which directly influenced the hero's journey. Right, let's get back on track with the theories and predictions. We can assume that the entire time Alan's been writing in an attempt to escape, but of course these have all clearly failed, and we've seen one of these narratives in Alan Wake's American Nightmare. But in the newest trailers, we see Saga Anderson interviewing Alan Wake, and he appears to be the Alan Wake from American Nightmare. We also see her find a version of Alan that looks like he's washed ashore. He's disheveled and confused, and though it wouldn't be that strange for a trailer to show late game footage, I don't think that this is Alan actually escaping the Dark Place. This is either another doppelganger, or Alan has projected himself into the world much the same as the Dark Presence version of Barbara Jagger did. We already know there's definitely 2 versions of Alan, the real Alan and Mr. Scratch, so why not more? And speaking of Mr. Scratch, that brings me to my next point. In the trailer we got from Gamescom, we see Alex Casey in the Dark Place confronting Alan about being a murderer, being the leader of the cult. And this is further cemented when we see in the 14-minute gameplay segment the spectral image of 2 police officers discussing a ritualistic murder, and one of them states that he's heard that Alan Wake is the leader of the cult. And in another part of this gameplay, we see Alan go from the writer's room to the summoning ritual, in which we hear a chant that mirrors the words that Thomas Zane said to Alan about Mr. Scratch in the first game.
This is the ritual to lead you on. Your friends will meet him when you're gone.
So I'd say it's reasonable to say that it's Mr. Scratch and not Alan who's in charge of this death cult. But that's not the interesting thing about this theory. If you think back to the end of the first game, it quite clearly framed ex-FBI agent Robert Nightingale as being the next avatar for the Dark Presence. But from everything we've seen, he's been killed in a ritualistic murder by the cult. He's had his heart removed. There's a clear parallel between this and what Thomas Zane did to Barbara Jagger. Is Mr. Scratch trying to harness the power of the darkness? In the Saga Anderson gameplay trailer, we see her find Nightingale's heart. It's in a freezer in an abandoned convenience store, protected by a shroud of darkness. So at least we know for certain that the heart is important to the story. And I believe that that has significance because the heart has become an object of power. And we know that the stories of Alan Wake and Control are linked, so perhaps Mr. Scratch is one of the paracriminals mentioned in that game. Perhaps the leader of the Blessed Organization, which in turn would fit in with the cult imagery. And speaking of Control, there's one scene where we see a version of Alan burst through the door with a spiral that we find in the Ocean View Motel and Casino. He's brandishing a gun and he shoots the version of Alan that's working at the typewriter in the cabin, causing him to wake up in the green room of the Mr. Door late night talk show. He's clutching at his head, feeling for a bullet wound. He goes onto the talk show and speaks to Mr. Door, who informs him that Initiation is coming out tomorrow. Alan appears really confused and seems to be having a panic attack. Now this may be the the Dark Place just playing tricks on him, but my prediction is this is something put in place by Alan himself. We know that the cabin seems to have a hypnotic effect, which makes him forget what he's doing. I think this is something he's written in to reset his brain so he can continue writing, because I feel like if he's going to escape, he needs to write everything into the story. Everything has to be concise and make sense, otherwise the story will fail, like going straight to Return. Another thing that I've noticed that at least partially fits into this theory is that in the original game, the desk that Alan writes at is facing the windows, but here we see that the desk is facing away from the windows. Is there something about looking out into the void that keeps making Alan forget? Is this a way of negating the hypnotic effects of the Dark Place? Honestly, I think that it is, and I think that Alan Wake has spent the last 13 years trying to understand the rules of the Dark Place so he can use its power to escape, which again would link it back to the hero's journey, making Alan a master of two worlds, which is the penultimate monomyth in the hero's journey. Okay, so before I do my last couple of predictions, I just wanted to say thank you for watching the video. I can see that about 90% of viewers aren't subscribed, so if you found any fun in this video at all, please just hit that subscribe button and maybe leave me a comment with your theories. I would honestly love to hear them. Okay, with the shameless self-promotion out of the way, let's get back to predictions. Back to talking about the ocean view for a moment. In screenshots and trailers, we've seen Alan in the Dark Place version of New York, and we see the Ocean View Hotel. And we've also seen him carrying the Angel Lamp, which is the lamp that the clicker was taken from. We see him use it to alter the nature of his surroundings. So my prediction is that Alan will use the Angel Lamp to get into the Ocean View Motel that we find from Control rather than the hotel. And Alan will get some kind of help from Jesse Faden, or at least interact with her in some way. I don't think she's going to be a main character in this game, but I'm almost certain there's going to be some kind of interaction between the two stories. My next prediction is going to be about how the game is structured. I think that as Alan, we're going to be playing through the events of Initiation, but Saga Anderson will be playing through the events of Return. And of course, just after I recorded that line, IGN got an exclusive 11 minutes of footage which basically confirms it. So if this is correct, I believe that this will be the end of the Alan Wake story, or at least the end of this Alan Wake story, as I'm certain there's going to be at least some kind of Easter eggs or interactions with Alan in Control 2. And now on to my final prediction. The Thomas Zane that Alan interacts with in this game, and also the AWE expansion for Control, isn't the Thomas Zane from the first game at all. He's a hindrance, an enemy. He's leading Alan the wrong direction. If we look at the trailer, Alan says he must go deeper. But in the DLCs for the first game, Thomas Zane always warned us about going deeper. So I believe this version of Thomas Zane is the Dark Place taking Alan's ideas and using them against him, ensuring he's travelling in the wrong direction and can never truly escape. Well, okay, I guess that's about enough for this video. Thank you so much if you've made it this far. Like and subscribe, and please leave those comments. I would love to read your theories and see if any of you guys agree with mine. Right, with that said, I'll see you on the next video.